Let's preview some NWSL action. We got to start with some winners, Lisa. We've got multiple consecutive weeks of points for these teams that we're going to start previewing ahead of this weekend. I think we should start with OL Reign because they're coming off of a Challenge Cup win and they're going up against Racing Louisville. This one's kicking off on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Reign coming off a midweek Challenge Cup rivalry win against Portland Thorns. Didn't get that pick right. I went with Thorns. You went with Reign. Yeah. But I'm going to take a little bit, like a half point, because I said it would be narrow, right? I was like, it's going to be narrow.
There's no half points in this betting game. I know you're trying.
No participation trophies here on A3. Boo. We're
laying down the law here with our picks that we're doing. No half points for you, but yes, OL Reign gets the narrow win, 1-0 over Portland Thorns. The goal coming from Elise Bennett. I gave her a shout when we previewed this match for OL Reign, saying that she's been getting more and more minutes, and now's the point in the season where, similarly to last season with Kansas City, her rookie year, where she really started to get in a groove and getting things going. She scored in the 55th minute. Fantastic stuff from her. It was a pretty methodical game between Portland and OL Reign. But I want to shout out Shelby Hogan in goal for Portland Thorns and Laurel Ivory in goal for OL Reign. I think these goalkeepers stepped up big. We've seen them get time in Challenge Cup matches again, but really coming up with big stops and big saves to keep their team in games that were happening. I was impressed with what we saw from them, and OL Reign kind of sneaking out a win at the end of this one, holding on. They're also coming off a regular season win, right? That was a 2-1 win over San Diego in last week's regular season. And now as they go on to play Racing Louisville, they get to be at home, which is good for them. I think this is going to be a good matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious as maybe we'll get to see another start from some of these players who started midweek. I love anytime Elise Bennett gets the start for OL Reign. I love that she was finally able to get the breakthrough on goal for the squad in this midweek Challenge Cup game. It's a big deal scoring in a rivalry game. You get to hold your head up a little higher. You get to say, yeah, I did that for the squad. And I think we've seen a lot of really good play out of Bennett in these very selective moments from Laura Harvey. She hasn't always gotten the start this season. She's part of that really deep squad for the Reign. But I like that this is the time where we thought of the season where maybe she would get more starts, and we're starting to see that. And that with those consistent minutes kind of comes that consistent play. She's just a player that I enjoy watching. She's just a real poacher of a player. I mean, we saw her kind of lure Sheridan in that regular season game, get issued that 90-minute red card just because of her kind of relentless energy. And I like that it paid off for her ultimately in this match. I'm curious about the other side of this regular season game, how that's going to affect game planning for Racing Louisville. They have this footage midweek to go off of against OL Reign. How is Bjorkgren going to prepare against this very deep OL Reign team? They're losing some players of their own. We don't have the regular season availability reports at this time, but we do know that Savannah DeMello is going to be a non-factor in this game because of being with U.S. women's national team right now. Are they going to have some of their other internationals available? Is Carlin going to be available, right? Is Schwang going to be available? Is Kanua going to be available? So these are all players for Racing Louisville who have had also had an impact for Louisville. So now I'm that's the question mark for me going into this one.
Wang Chuang, that roster is not out yet either. Alex Chidiak got called up on the preliminary roster for Australia. As you said, Katlana, Kanu, there are a number of internationals for Racing Louisville, which Kim Bjorkgren has done a nice job kind of acquiring them. This will be the second matchup for OL Reign Racing Louisville in the regular season. The first one coming the tail end of April, so really at the start of the season, but it was a draw, 2-2 draw at the end of it. Racing Louisville got on the board early in that match, and they ended up going up 2-0 at halftime, heading into the halftime. Then they concede a penalty kick. Pino finishes that one. And then at the tail end of the game in the 90th minute, Jordan Heitema equalizes for OL Reign and closes out that game. It's also for fans to kind of remember, jog your memory. It's also the game Savannah DeMello got a red, and she had to then sit out the next one. So she got a little spicy in that game. And she will, of course, be missing for Racing Louisville in the second matchup against OL Reign, which I think it's going to be tough for OL Reign to get back on the winning side of things without DeMello. Like it's a big team, right? And there's so many different factors that come into it. But Savannah DeMello has played her way onto the U.S. national team by her show with Racing Louisville. And now that she's not there for them, I think a lot of pressure is going to fall on Jalen Howe, on some of the other players like Paige Monahan in the front line. I think Katie Lund in goal is also going to have a little bit more pressure. But Racing Louisville is coming off a loss. They've got to pick up points. Meanwhile, OL Reign is 3 games undefeated, and they're playing at home with Elise Bennett, Ziara King. I'm high on OL Reign at this point. I picked them in the midweek. I'm picking them again. I think Laura Harvey's squad is going to get the win over Racing Louisville.
I'm with you. Look, we're going to start off this episode going 1-for-1 here. I'm also going with the Reign in this one. I think even with a midweek match, even with it again, going against Portland, that's not a lot of travel for these players. I think many of them might be used to making this type of road trip, even if it is midweek against Portland. So Seattle to Portland, I'm not too concerned for that. And I don't really think that Laura Harvey and those players are looking at that as a disadvantage either. So the fact that they had a very, very short trip, they have to face a visiting side, out of Kentucky, and they're the ones coming into this one. And there are some unknown variables there that we're talking about with the availability reports. I think everything's in here for the Reign to just keep winning, honestly. I'm also kind of a little curious if this might be the game where they get back to a higher score line. We thought, okay, they're going to go up against the rivals. It might be narrow. Not only is it a rivalry game, but they're going to miss certain pieces on this team, crucial pieces, starting players. Maybe it'll be narrow because of that, along with the rotation as well. So I'm very curious if maybe this is the game where it's not such a narrow scoreline. Maybe we get, a 2-0 possibly for OL. And I think, it's important to note that, for Louisville and what they're coming off of in their previous match against the Courage, that was a narrow match. But I think we got to see a little bit of that blueprint, something that we've been, talking about on the show. And I've said, like, look, Savannah DeMello's having an outrageous season for Louisville. There is enough footage at this point for teams to prepare for her. And yet she still goes out there and has massive games. And the Courage actually kind of showed a little bit what it could look like to maybe isolate that player and maybe kind of cancel out some of their impact. So now that Louisville knows that they are not going to have Savannah DeMello, how do they prepare? I'm very curious to see what it looks like. But not enough there for me. I'm going to go with the Reign as well. So we're going 2 for 2 to start. It's dangerous, Lisa, when we get into that.
I know it is a little bit dangerous, but I like it. I like it. I think that, we'll see come Sunday night, Monday, or Saturday afternoon. Yeah, OL Reign. I think they're going to be good. In this
All right. Let's talk about another team that's picking up points. I just alluded to them a little bit. North Carolina Courage versus Houston Dash. This one's also kicking off on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. The Courage just quietly hanging out in the upper half of the table.
I'm assuming win after win after win for North Carolina, in my eyes.
Just doing their thing. Look, talk about a team that we've also enjoyed covering this season and the rise of their form. It's absolutely North Carolina Courage. Coaching staff, Sean Nahas, and what they're doing out there. The team is bought in. I think unlike some other clubs who are, losing players to the international window, I kind of feel like the Courage are a team that might sustain some of the performance that they have built up already over the course of the first half of the season during these strange stretches of time in the World Cup window. So there's going to be a couple of regular season games, and there's going to be a handful of Challenge Cup games on the docket for clubs during this World Cup stretch. But even with some players who might go missing for the Courage, whether it's going to be Sullivan, Carolyn, etc., I just think the system
Yeah, me too.
is in place. The players are trusting the system, and it looks like you can rotate in and rotate out, and you could still get results.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that North Carolina has set themselves up for success moving forward, but they're missing big pieces, Sandra. They really are. I mean, you
Casey
mentioned
Murphy.
Brazilian international, Denise O'Sullivan, Irish international. That's a big part of the system that Sean Nahas is playing in those two midfielders. Emily Fox, Casey Murphy with the United States, they will be out, defender and goalkeeper respectively. There's potential for some other internationals to leave. I'm looking at Denmark in particular with
Kyle.
Kyle and Madsen in the midfield as well. Those rosters have not been dropped yet, but you're exactly right. North Carolina's been on a very good run. They've picked up points in the last 7 of their 8 regular season games. They've won the last 4 of their 5. They're on a bit of a run right now in the regular season. And their opposition in Houston Dash is one that they have already played against. However, it was only 51 minutes. Think back to that first matchup between these two sides. It ended due to weather in the 51st minute. And the way the NWSL breaks down, as soon as you finish the first half, the game can be considered completed. So these two sides did restart the second half, and they played 51 minutes. And North Carolina ended up getting the win. And it was Houston thought it was unfair. I mean, right? Like they started to get on a roll. That's why you play a 90-minute game, right? To see out the score. But that's how it worked. It was on the road for North Carolina in Houston, only 51 minutes. They weathered the storm, and they got a 1-0 win in a first half goal that really solidified the game for them. Now they're playing at home, a place in Wake Med where North Carolina has done a tremendous job this year in making it a fortress for opposition to come in and play. And I think for Houston, they're going to be out for blood considering how that first game ended. Houston's also on a bit of a run themselves. They're undefeated in their last 5 regular season games. However, it's 3 straight draws for the Dash. And that's something that they've struggled to pick up points. Back-to-back 0-0 draws against Angel City, against OL Reign, a 1-1 draw against Gotham. Can they kind of get over that hump? I don't think it's this week. And I'm going to go with the Courage. At home, the run that they've been going on, despite Houston maybe having more players than North Carolina at this point in terms of like who's available and who's not.
I'm not gonna front. There were phases of this where I'm like looking at this matchup and I'm like, geez, is this gonna be the draw where it comes out? I mean, I love that you mentioned the previous match between these two teams. You have to imagine that Houston felt hard done by it, not only then, but obviously taking a look at things or the schedule ahead and saying, we're gonna get another crack at this. I'm also really curious about, the whole former players going up against their previous clubs. Like, how is Diana Ordonez going to perform in a match like this? We have seen that some weeks she's on, some weeks she's off. There's been some solutions that have, across that top line for Houston that have worked better than others. What is that going to look like this week? That's something else I'm curious about in this matchup. How is Sam Lady going to go ahead and target this game? I would imagine that Houston can play some exciting kind of counter-attacking ball. Like, maybe they're going to look at the opposition in front of them and say, you know what, here's the ball, take it, keep it. We're going to do our best to make the most of it when we have it. But my thing is, can they be clinical enough in this game and in those moments?
Without Katie Lind. Lest we not forget, Houston has gotten red cards in back-to-back games. The first one, Natalie Jacobs, she served her suspension last week for the Dash against Angel City. And then Katie Lind, formerly Naughton, center back for Houston, mainstay, Iron Woman that gets snapped now for her. She received a red card against Angel City. She is not available in this game versus North Carolina. That's going to be tough. That is going to be tough for Houston to kind of mainstay in the back line. We saw it shifted last week against Angel City without Jacobs, who's been a center back. We were like, okay, how is this going to work? What are we going to see? And the way that it shifted, it was Sophie Schmidt dropping back into the center back alongside Lind and Prysock. But now what's going to happen? How are they going to play with it? I think it'll still be a 3-back from Sam Lady. That's what he did last week. It'll just be interesting. And I think there's just too many factors in opposition of Houston going against them that I'm going to give this one to Sean Nahas in North Carolina still.
Yeah, I think I started off chatting about this game, kind of alluding to the fact that I felt better about North Carolina in this one. And again, it's dangerous when we go not only 1 for 1 for 2 for 2, but I just think there's going to be enough there for the courage to put this one away. Maybe it ends up being another, narrow score line, but this time it actually goes to 90 minutes. And hopefully the Dash can go this week without a red card issue to their players, and they don't have to set themselves up for long stretches of time down a player. We'll see what happens when these two take the pitch head to head.